I would like to welcome everyone to the Open Book broadcast, where we are in conversation about anything to do with writing and publishing a book and all the things in between. And we're going to be an open book about whatever we discuss. I'm so excited to be welcoming Susan Gutnik to the broadcast today, and I'm excited about what Susan's going to share with us. But before we launch into our conversation, I would like to introduce Susan properly, as there are so many wonderful things to say about her and her business and what she brings to the table. So Susan is the owner, creative director, designer at Thrive Creative LLC, which is a print and digital graphic design studio. Susan is a branding specialist, an award-winning book designer, and a full-service graphic designer. Book design is one of her specialties. She earned a BFA in graphic design from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and her love of book design was developed after years as a full-time staff book designer at McGraw-Hill in St. Louis. Later at the University of New Mexico Press in Albuquerque, and she's had the opportunity to design both covers and interiors of a wide variety of books. So as you can all imagine, today we are going to be talking to Susan about cover and book design. Susan, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Well, Susan, I am so excited to hear what you have to say about book design from cover to cover. Haha, pun intended. So why don't we just begin with you telling us how you ended up creating your own business after all of those years working with other presses, and what you absolutely love about what you do.
Well, I do a wide variety of things, which I enjoy doing, and book design is one of the things that I really love doing. I have, as you mentioned, I have a BFA in graphic design, so I have experience working with all kinds of applications: branding, logo design, websites, advertising. But book design just holds a special place in my heart. Books are magical, and I still consider books as something that are handheld, even though most of us are enjoying them on screen a lot now. But I think the real magic in them comes in being able to hold them and being able to interact with them, underlining, writing in the columns and the margins. And I think that experience to me is just wonderful. And I like to participate in that by designing a book and having it be something that people love and enjoy coming back to over and over.
Yeah. So Susan, tell me, were you an avid reader? Have you always been in love with books?
I have always been in love with books, but the funny thing is I'm not really an avid reader. I'm a visual person, and I do love words. As a child, I always had a sketchbook and a journal in hand, and I've always interacted between the visuals and the words, and that's has been my great appeal to the format of a book, and being able to work with both elements at the same time. So book design was just kind of a natural extension of what I've always been doing and loving to do myself. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the magic you bring to the table, right? So you love books, but really it's the visual piece that lends itself to the book by being that cover designer. And so what about like the design inside the book? So obviously we all know that when we pick up a book or we're drawn to a book in the bookstore, it's usually the cover, right? That we're drawn to, the way that the cover presents, the idea of the book or the essence of the book or the title of the book. But the middle of the book is so much words. Like, how do you bring visual flair to the inside of the book, which is obviously more word heavy?
Yeah, I really consider designing the interior to be a very subtle art. There are a few elements that really lend themselves to design, like the title page, like the chapter opener, like the hierarchy of heads and subheads and all of that. And I think it's a very subtle art that I really enjoy doing. And it creates a package that when I have the privilege of designing both the cover and interior, you can carry a theme through from start to finish. And I can show you some examples. I'd love to do that.
Yes, let's do that. Show us some examples.
Because sometimes I think people think the inside is always the same, and it's not. And it may be maybe subtle things that a lot of people don't pick up on, but it is informing the reader, and it is creating a theme that they may or may not be conscious of, but that is there, and that is kind of creating a feeling about the book that carries through from what the book is about. You know, when all of that works together, when the subject matter of the book and the visuals of the book work together, you're creating a total experience for the reader. And they may not even be conscious of it, but it's going on and it's happening. And that's what I really love. Like, a lot of that interior design, people may not even be aware of, but it's working on them and it's having an effect on their experience of the book. So if we can, let's just share a few pages. I'd like to just kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about.
Yes, we would love to see them. Go ahead, share your screen and show us what you're talking about.
Okay, so let's see. All right, here we go. All right, do you see that?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, here's one book. Just to show you how the theme from the cover can be carried through the book, and how there are subtle elements that are informing the reader. They may not be aware of it, but it's creating their experience. So this book is about some experience that happened that was traumatic. And you can tell by that torn photograph that there was something that happened between those two people. We don't know what it is yet. It's kind of intriguing. And just the way the title is set up, it kind of gives a feeling of something, impending, foreboding perhaps.
Yeah.
So that is carried through to the title page. We have the entire photograph opposite the title page. So there they are together. We know something is going to happen throughout this book that's going to create some kind of traumatic experience. So as you can see, the title page reflects what the cover looks like. And then as we go into it, the table of contents has a very distinct design to it. And that design is carried through on the title pages as well. And then this beautiful initial cap that's there as well. So there's an immersion here. There's an experience that goes from start to finish, that carries the reader through the book. And I'll just show you a few other examples. Do you have any comments or questions here?
Well, what I love about being able to see like the images all together in one is that you actually can see it very intentionally done this way. Whereas when you pick up a book, you don't see it in this layout, right? You look at the cover, you flip open to the interior, and like you said, you don't make the connection that everything is so beautifully pulled together, maybe. Because you're kind of immersed in the content versus the visual representation of the book. But seeing it this way with the cover on one side and then interior pages on the other, you can see how thoughtful all of these elements are woven together. And for me, like, I think, oh my gosh, this is like a case file and there's a mystery to be solved here. Like, there's something about that, the black and white, the typescript, what's happening here makes me feel very much like I've just peeked into a PI's office and am about to uncover like the great resolution to this big mystery that of the ripped photograph.
Exactly, and as you say, everything is intentional here. You won't know this, but this jacket is printed on a beautiful textured stock that has a speckle to it. Well, I wanted this type to pop, so we printed white underneath this black box so that the type would come up white. And we also printed white on the photograph here. Again, you probably don't know it and you probably don't see it. But again, it's those subtle things that intentionality and attention to detail to create this atmosphere and this sensation for the reader. They may not be conscious of it, but as they're reading the book, just the layout, just the look of it is also communicating an experience and a feeling for them.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, so let's just. Okay, here's another one. Here is a story about an Indian, the Mohegans, created the title page and the title here to kind of reflect that kind of primitive sort of look, I guess you would say. Again, I just want to show that all of these pages will have subtle differences. And here's the title page again. And they're all communicating something. and it ties the whole book together as the reader goes through it. It's again that immersion experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, here's another beautiful book. This is about stories of the New West. This art is about a very famous Pueblo artist created this artwork, and I got special permission to use it. He talks a lot about horses, of course, in the book, and it was just so great to tie that cultural art in with the book. It was just a great thing to be able to do. And again, I just want to show that table of contents does not have to look the same from book to book. It can really be very unique, as well as the chapter openers. And you know, it's creating a very aesthetic experience, and that's what I'm really after.
I love the colors on this one, on the cover.
Yeah, I do.
And the I mean, you have to tell me about your process, because I'm curious. So like the thinness, the leanness of the horse's legs, right? Did that immediately invoke in you a type of font style that was thin and lean? Because I mean, the first horses, right, like has that very thin kind of font, and it so beautifully echoes the legs of the horses in the actual image.
Yeah, and the colors in the title too echo the colors in the horses. You know, these are very primitive images in a sense by the artist, who again was a very well-known Pueblo artist. So it's really tying that whole cultural experience in with the content of the book, and that's what he talks about. But yeah, I picked up on the energy and the look of the horses, the colors. So yeah, that was definitely my inspiration. And I had to go jump through a few hoops to get permission to use it, but it was well worth it. So.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I love the stark white with kind of the rainbow of color across the middle.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Again, just to show, you know, a full range of working with the title. Essays on Rural Women have a great photograph of a woman plowing her field. Again, reflected on the title page. And then again, subtle choices and for table of contents and for chapter openers. It's just, you know, a real opportunity for very subtle beauty to show up. And I love people to have a beautiful experience as they're going through a book. So that's just my personal, that's just what I enjoy doing. So it's a real privilege to be able to do both the cover and interior. That doesn't always happen. Working with university presses, that always happens. But here's another book. This was an AAUP award-winning book. It was the first time tin work had been compiled in one place. Tin work is really kind of really a home art. It was things that were done at the kitchen table with leftover cans. You know, they would make lanterns and you know, religious objects. And this book was the first time someone attempted to compile all of those beautiful artifacts. And so I created a design. I don't know if you can see, there's a real kind of there's like an edge to this rule. It kind of looks like the edge of a tube.
Yeah, I see that.
And then New Mexican is spaced out. And so there's different textures going on here. The spacing of this and the lighter type has a different texture than the tin work part, which has a much stronger look to it. And that whole kind of design is kind of carried throughout the book. Here's what the chapter title pages look like, allowing plenty of space. I love that vastness, when you can create vastness in a book. So yeah, this was a fun book to work on. Again, felt like a privilege for sure. So I just wanted to share that I think you had, one of the questions you had posed to me at one time was, you know, why design? Why design a book? you're creating an experience for the reader, something that could be subtle, or it could be, something that they're conscious of, but you're kind of carrying them through the book and showing them how and what they need to look at. There isn't a lot of examples here on heads and subheads, but that's something that, usually it's what the editor in advance, will work out with the author, and then I get a chance to design it so that when people are reading the book, they know the hierarchy of what's important and what are subheads, what goes under that. And it just helps guide the reader through the book. So, you're kind of taking them by the hand, showing them what's important and what relates to what. So, So all of those cues are so important. And that's what people like you do and editors do. They set that up so that I can design it and make it easy for the reader to get through the book.
Right, right. I think people often forget how important heads and subheads are in organizing material, especially in the nonfiction space. And in memoir, which I work on a lot with people, there can sometimes be some subheadings in chapter titles with like a certain year, or the character's a certain age or something like that. But I find that subheads are probably more helpful when somebody is trying to explain their framework or their theory or their business principles or methods, because those things end up being multifaceted and a little bit more complex. And so the subheadings end up lending themselves to basically signposting for the reader, so the reader doesn't get lost in the material. But oftentimes the people I work with wouldn't classify themselves as writers. They know their expertise, they know their specific area, or they know their specific story, but trying to then clarify their message or their story for the reader is something that they're not familiar with. And so that's where your talent or my talent, right, comes into play, helping them organize their thoughts in a way that's going to allow the reader the best possible experience and the best possible way to understand.
So well put. Absolutely. And I think it helps the writer too to begin to understand what they're trying to say when they start organizing in that manner. I think it clarifies for them as well.
Right, right. So while I was looking at these examples, Susan, it got me thinking. You clearly have, this beautiful design eye. You can think about images, or you look at an image that you're going to use in the cover and you figure out how it lends itself to maybe what it needs to do with the font or the style type or something like that. So when you're working with a client, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to have absolutely none of their input so that you can kind of have your own creative genius around how the book is designed? Or do you like them to come with some of their ideas? How does that kind of collaboration work between you and the author? And maybe it's different if they're coming to you as an independent author versus like a press getting in touch with you with their own ideas. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. The input of the author is absolutely vital. I want to understand what they're trying to say. I want to understand what they have in mind. It might not be always the perfect solution, but it definitely is a starting point for us to have a conversation about what they're trying to do and what might be the best way of doing it. But yeah, I'm not a mind reader, and this is not my book. I'm here to serve the author, or to serve the editor, or to serve the press. And the author is the boss as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
It's baby, and yeah. I'm just here to help amplify what they're trying to say. I'm just here to help them clarify, as you are. That's your role as well. So that they can be the best they can be. And the product at the end is serving the reader in the best way. But yeah, no, I'm here to serve the author. There's no question about that. Yeah.
So if they come to you with a suggestion or with an idea, or maybe another cover that they like, but you're like, I would not recommend that for a number of reasons. Perhaps it's too cluttered. Perhaps it doesn't speak to the actual message. Do you kind of guide them through making a different decision, or do you just say they're the boss, the customer's always right? How does that conversation work?
Well, sometimes there definitely is a difference of opinion, but usually people have an idea, but it really isn't fleshed out yet. They think they know what they want. And if I listen closely and I understand what's what they're really trying to achieve, what's behind that. I can usually come up with a solution that they recognize, oh, wow, that's even better than what I was thinking. You know, that's exactly what I was trying to say, but I didn't know how to say it. So, you know, I try to really listen closely, be respectful to what they're trying to achieve. And I've really never had the experience where we were really at odds about what's the right way to go.
Yeah.
Usually, you know, when they're presented with options, you know, I mean, we're all consumers, you know, and it's not like it's some special skill to know what's best. I mean, people can look at something and say, oh yeah, that works better. You know, oh yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah, it's real important. I mean, they're not artists, they're writers, you know, so they have a concept of what they're trying to say, but it's not usually fully fleshed out. It's not usually fully developed. And that's something I can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you maybe tell people, so let's just imagine that the people watching this video are the aspiring authors, whether they've written something yet or not. What would you say to them if they said, well, why is book design important?
Yeah. I think for all the reasons that we've been talking about, we want to give the reader the best possible experience. And also lately, a lot of people are writing books in order to establish their credibility and their expertise. Mm-hmm. It's a memoir of, you know, having experience. A lot of them are going to go on to be coaches or consultants in some way. And a memoir shows their experience and what they've been through. So, you know, I think it's important for the book to have a professional, quote unquote, professional look to it, a sensibility to it that we're all consumers now, and we all expect a certain level of excellence to what we see, you know, mm-hmm. and sophistication to what we see. And so I think that's where design comes in, you know, and that's where I can help someone present their information and their material in a way that helps them look professional and helps them look like the expert in that field.
Yeah, I want to pause there for a minute because it makes me think of the fact that, like, even though we know not to judge a book by its cover in the way that it's meant, the thing is that we do, right? We make an immediate judgment when we see a book, right? And this happens to me all the time. I find a book on Amazon, perhaps, or Bookshop, or, you know, whatever, and I am interested in what the book is about. I'm interested in the title, so I order it, and then it arrives in the mail, and I flip it open immediately, and I recognize that it is poorly designed on the inside. And that the cover is not as impressive in person as it was when I looked at it online, right? Because everything looks different anyway when you see it in person than when you see it on the computer, right? But as soon as I open it up and I realize that, you know, it doesn't have footers the way that it should, or the typesetting is all off, or, you know, they've used a boilerplate copyright something or other, you know, I start to question the integrity of the book, which is horrible, because the story might be incredible, the message might be incredible, the content might be fantastic, but I'm already going, did I waste my money, and am I going to waste my time with this book because it doesn't look like it's been done well? And that's the thing that I'm always stressing with the people that I work with is, no matter what you do, no matter what avenue you go in publishing, bust out all the stops. Take it seriously. Invest in all of the greatest people that you can possibly invest in to make your book as beautiful as it can be, because it matters. It counts, right? You don't want to be discredited because you cut corners somewhere thinking that people weren't paying attention. Do you want to riff off of that for a second?
That is just so right on. I mean, it is a trust issue, you know, and we as consumers have learned to expect a certain level of professionalism, of finish. of excellence to things that we want to buy and invest in. And the finish of the book, the look of the book does reflect on the author, and their competency in a way. And, so yeah, I am in total agreement. You want the whole experience to be seamless for the reader, for the consumer. You're putting your name on it. I mean, it's part of a reputation that you're building, and that know, like, and trust issue that you're trying to create, and a following that you're definitely trying to build. So yeah, I think it's very important. I think it's something that is important to do. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, a book is an extension of your brand or your business or your thought leadership, or, whatever you want to fill in the blank with, right? And as it being an extension of yourself, it's an extension of the representation of yourself. And so, it's just really important to be paying attention to those minute details. I mean, it might seem silly to some to think like, well, why am I stressing out so much about my subheaders, or, why am I stressing so much over like how big the font is, like who cares if it's like 2 points larger or smaller? But, I would really argue that because of the fact that the book is an extension of you, you need to care. Like you should care, right? So why don't we talk a little bit about, so let's say we've got this beautiful book that's designed. What should a person know about the ways that they can leverage their cover art beyond just it being the representation of their book? Do you have any tips or suggestions of how people can get more miles out of their cover design?
Well, they can definitely, it's something that's definitely going to be used throughout all of their communications, through social media, website, wherever they appear. It's probably going to be part of who they are. I think your point about it being part of their branding, everything that we do now is branding. I mean, anytime you appear anywhere, on social media, anytime, you are branding yourself. And so that cover, I'm sure, is going to turn up wherever they're going to turn up. What are your thoughts?
So, well, I like to tell people that your cover design should be on bookmarks if you're planning to have them. Maybe your LinkedIn banner if you're planning on writing multiple books, or the book has something to do specifically with, what you're promoting on LinkedIn, right? It could be in the footer of your email. You could use it, for my book, Dear Universe, I Get It Now. I ended up creating, giveaway pens that matched the exterior of the book. I put together bookmarks. Trying to think. Here's my little stack of things. So I put together a coffee mug, that matched the cover of my book. So they were branded together, and when people wanted to purchase something, right, it was like they were going to get the experience of Dear Universe, like no matter what. So postcards, bookmarks, a little review card that someone made me, all pulled together the cover design art so that it was always consistent, and people knew, like, that book, they all go hand in hand.
There you go. That kind of recognition, that is so important. You can't overdo it. I mean, people just need to see something over and over and over again to start building that recognition. I'm always amazed at people, influencers who are very well established, like Marie Forleo, Amy Porterfield, all of those kind of people, how much they are constantly putting themselves out there. I mean, you would think, why do they need to do it? I mean, they have a huge following. No, they know that they have to constantly be in front of people in order to continue on the kind of trajectory that they're on, and continue having that kind of following and that kind of interest in them. So yeah, you can't overdo it. And that consistency is just so important, that people, like you say, every time, that imagery turns up, and that's going to be implanted in people's brain. You know, that's Allie, you know.
Right. Right. I think the other thing too, right, to think about this from a financial perspective, because books can be very expensive, right, is to think about the ROI, the return on investment, right? So you pay whatever the payment is for a wonderful cover designer, such as yourself, and book designer. And like, think about how much more leverage you're getting out of that design when you can put it on your bookmarks and your postcards and your LinkedIn banner and your email footer and your, you know, it's an investment in your marketing, really, not just your book, but your marketing in general. And you don't know how that's going to convert. You know, one of the things that, you know, just happened recently, I went to a live event. I spoke, I had a 45-minute presentation that I gave. I mentioned in the presentation loosely that, you know, I wrote a book. I put the cover up on the screen for maybe 30 seconds. I told people that I had books with me, left it at that. I sold all 30 copies in 3 days.
Wow.
You know, simple cover design on one slide, a brief mention that I had a book. And while my book was not the topic of my presentation, people liked what I had to say enough that they were interested in the book, right? And all they needed was to see the cover of the book up on a screen. And then they knew, okay, I'm going to go check it out after the fact. I'm going to go talk to her in person and I'm going to look at the book, you know, because, you know, she flashed it up there and she hooked my interest. So, you know, and then who knows, those 30 people who bought a book might send it out to another 30 people as a recommendation. And now I've got another 30 people who have bought it. And somewhere in there, there might be somebody who's like my ideal client who not only wants to read my book, but now wants to work with me to write theirs. So we don't think about how long down the line that beautiful cover design might actually turn into big bucks later on if we've done it well.
Absolutely. And I always think that you know, that cover design is your #1 marketing tool, you know, and like you say, there's so many ramifications of how it can be used and applied, you know, and you know, I love all that swag that you're creating around that one design, because it begins to create, like you say, a brand and a theme, and it gets to be much bigger than just the cover. It begins to be part of your identity, and people begin to identify with it. I was wondering if you had any swag at that meeting that you sold there.
I put a bookmark with every single book.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And I didn't bring a lot of other things because I had to pack everything. I didn't ship anything because I was worried it was going to get lost or not get there on time. But, you know, when I table at events more locally, you know, I bring the pens, I bring the review cards, I bring the postcards, so that if people don't have the money or they're not interested in the book right away, they can take something with them that they're going to find at the bottom of their purse when they're least expecting it. And, you know, that's going to remind them, oh yeah, I wanted to go and check out that book maybe 2 weeks after the fact, or, you know, whatever it is. But to play off of something you said earlier, Susan, you know, you were talking about the experience of a book. Well, when you then use the cover design of your book to then create all these other marketing assets around it, you're basically expanding the experience, right? Beyond just your book, but to you, right? You're letting people experience you in a more holistic, kind of broader way than just what you had to say in the one book.
Yeah, you know, when you think of yourself in bigger terms, other people will think of you in bigger terms. And so,
oh yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
You know, I just as you're talking and explaining what you've done with your cover, you know, I'm seeing Allie, you know, as someone who kind of is bigger and broader than just the book. You know, she's kind of a movement. She's kind of a, you know, a way of thinking, you know, a point of view, an influencer, you know. So it's taking the book and enlarging it in a big way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, such gold right there. When you expand the way that you think of yourself, others expand the way that they think of you. It's just gorgeous. You should start using that in everything that you do with the cover and book design, and letting them know that that's exactly why they need to do this well and why it's important. So let's kind of wrap it up here. Where can people connect with you and learn more about what you do?
Sure. My website, which I think you have a link to as well.
Yep, I will make sure that everybody has the link in the description or the comments.
Website's the best place. LinkedIn, I'm in on a lot. Facebook, I think you have an email address for me as well. Yeah, they can find me any of those places.
All right, folks, you are going to want to connect to Susan if you're looking for some amazing and brilliant, okay, book design for your book, whether it's your first one, your next one, doesn't matter. You want to work with Susan. All right, Susan, thank you so much for being my guest on Open Book Broadcast. It was wonderful to have you. I learned so much. I enjoyed our conversation. And everyone, I will see you next time.